2024 end of year national examination results in respect of the following four Umalusi quality assured qualifications. The first is the General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training GTC ABET, which is at level 1 of the National Qualifications Framework, NQF, and is equivalent to grade 9 in schools. The GTC ABET is assessed by the Department of Higher Education and Training, DHET, Independent Examinations Board, IEB, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, Sakai. The second set of results are those of the NATED report 190-191 and 2 to N3 programs, which are assessed by the DHET. As a reminder, the N1 to N3 programs are being phased out, with the last enrollment date for the new students being the 31st of December 2023. The phase-out has been occasioned by the Government Gazette, signed by the Minister of Higher Education and Training on 25 August 2023. Detailed information on this phase-out process is available from the Department of Higher Education and Training. The third qualification is the National Certificate Vocational NCV, levels 2 to 4, and is assessed by the Department of Higher Education and Training. The fourth set of results are for the National Senior Certificate, NSC, which is assessed by the Department of Basic Education, DBE, the Independent Examinations Board, IEB, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, Sakai. Program Director, it is at this point where I find it necessary to clear the misconceptions about the NSC versus the IEB debate. As you may be aware, there are some members of the public who, in discussing grade 12 or matric results, refer to the IEB as if it is a qualification that is in competition with the NSC. The fact is that the IEB is not a certificate, but an assessment body accredited by Umalusi to administer the NSC and GETC ABET examinations. South Africa has got only one grade 12 or matric qualification, namely the National Senior Certificate. Therefore, the grade 12 learners who write and succeed in the NSC examinations under the IEB receive the same NSC certificate that is quality assured and issued by Umalusi, as is the case with the DBE and the Sakai learners. I think that point is clear, colleagues. Following the conduct, administration, and management of the above mentioned examinations by the four assessment bodies, the monitoring thereof by Umalusi and the standardization of examination results by the Assessment Standards Committee of Umalusi Council, both the assessment bodies and Umalusi presented their reports for the consideration of the Executive Committee of Council, EXCO. The outcomes of the deliberations of the ASC and the decisions of the EXCO of Umalusi Council will be presented shortly by Professor Eunice Balim, Chairperson of Umalusi Council. I will now briefly present the scope and size of the 2024 examinations. A total of 1,060,852 learners candidates participated in the 2024 end of year examinations. Out of that number, the National Senior Certificate NSC accounts for 832,993 candidates, or 78.5%, distributed across the Department of Basic Education, the Independent Examinations Board, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute. The remaining 227,859, or 21.5%, candidates are distributed across 3 qualifications. 130,000 wrote the NCV levels 1 to 4 examinations. 49,421 wrote the N2 to N3 examinations, and 40,438 wrote the GETC ABET examinations. The examinations were administered at a combined total of 9,566 examination centers distributed across the 9 provinces of the country. My apologies. As the law requires, all the examinations were subjected to the quality assurance processes of Umalusi. The General and Further Education and Training Quality Assurance Act 58 of 2001, as amended, acronymed GENFEDQA Act, confers a range of powers and functions on Umalusi in respect of the exit level national examinations associated with the qualifications on the sub-framework of qualifications, NQF levels 1 to 4. The powers and functions include the following: the external moderation of question papers and site-based assessments or school-based assessment, SBA, to ensure the maintenance of standards of assessment. The audit of the system to conduct, administer, and manage the examinations to determine the readiness of the whole system. The monitoring of the writing of the examinations across sampled examination centers to determine the credibility of the examinations. Participation in marking guideline standardization meetings in selected subjects to ensure that the marking process is accurate and reliable. Verification of quality of marking in sampled subjects to ensure accuracy and reliability. Standardization of examination marks to ensure comparability and consistency in learner performance across the years. And approval of the publication of the learner results. The above-mentioned quality assurance processes show that the quality assurance framework that Umalusi uses requires different role players to approach examination quality and standards from various but complementary dimensions to safeguard the integrity and credibility of every set of examination results. I would like to express our thanks to every one of the moderators, examinations monitors, marking verifiers, Umalusi staff, etc., for ensuring the full implementation of the quality assurance framework. Umalusi could not have reached this stage without your professional and administrative assistance. Regarding the standardization of the 2024 examinations, the Assessment Standards Committee of Umalusi Council standardized the results of the examinations between 19 December 2024 and 5 January 2025. As mentioned already, standardization of result is meant to ensure comparability and consistency in learner performance across years. This year's standardization processes were undertaken in the presence of officials representing 7 national and 3 continental organizations. The continental bodies were the Examinations Council of Lesotho, ECOL, Examinations Council of Zambia, ECZ, and Malawi National Examinations Board, MANEP. Nationally in attendance were senior officials representing Universities South Africa, USF, South African Qualifications Authority, SAQA, the South African Council for Educators, SACE, South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, National Professional Teachers Organization of South Africa, NAPTOSA, National Teachers Union, NATU, and the South African Honorables INI, SAOU. The observation of standardization processes by especially stakeholders and their organization lends credibility to the process and affirms our publicly stated position that Umalusi is a transparent public entity and that its quality assurance processes, standardization included, are open to the scrutiny of peers on the continent and elsewhere in the world. Based on the experiences gathered over 5 consecutive days, the observers from Lesotho, Malawi, and Zambia shared several key takeaways, of which the following 2 are worth singling out for the purposes of today. The first is that they said they were extremely impressed by the wealth of knowledge and experience that the members of the Assessment Standards Committee possess. Secondly, the observers said they were amazingly surprised at the ASC's use of multiple sources of available data or evidence, namely numerical evidence and narrative reports. They went further to affirm that the multiple reports elicited rich discussions that resulted in the ASC arriving at standardization decisions by way of consensus. Concerning the second takeaway, I can confirm as the CEO of Umalusi that during its standardization processes, the Assessment Standards Committee conducted meticulous analysis of the evidence presented in relation to each of the 514 subjects spread across 4 qualifications, 150 NSC subjects, 269 NCV levels 2 to 4 subjects, 55 N2 to N3 subjects, and 40 GTC ABET subjects to arrive at standardization decisions. Crucially important, I want to assure you that there were no deviations from the standardization principles in the manner in which the ASC standardized the 514 subject results. This makes it abundantly clear that the ASC carries a great responsibility on its shoulders. That is, to ensure that Umalusi truly honors its vision of being a trusted authority in fostering high education standards in general and further education and training in South Africa. Umalusi is indebted to the Assessment Standards Committee of Council for always executing its mandate in accordance with the Act. the relevant Umalusi policy and the approved principles of standardization, which were applied consistently across all qualifications and subjects. During the State of Readiness media briefing in October 2024, Umalusi raised a concern at the shortage of markers in relation to the DBE's history, Afrikaans first additional language, and English home language, particularly paper 3. I can confirm that the Department of Basic Education did manage to put in place plans to ameliorate the situation. Umalusi is also pleased that the other risk factors, such as load shedding, weather conditions, community protests, and so on, did not materially affect the smooth running of the examinations. As I conclude, I would like to express our concern at how some aspects of the conduct, administration, and management of the examinations were handled by some of the assessment bodies, disallowing candidates from writing. Umalusi is concerned at the persistent phenomenon of teachers and principals refusing to allow registered learners to write examinations in particular subjects. Anecdotally, this phenomenon is motivated by the desire to improve the results. This is unlawful, and Umalusi advises the affected learners and parents or guardians to report such incidents to the relevant authorities. Coming to unregistered candidates, Umalusi received a report from the Department of Basic Education to the effect that an independent school allowed 30 candidates who did not pass grade 11 to register for grade 12 examinations. This is highly irregular. Whereas this is only one case, it is one too many. Umalusi is satisfied with the action taken to withdraw both the registration of these 30 candidates and the withdrawal also of the registration status of the school concerned. So they will no more be allowed to run examinations. With regard to unaccredited institutions, Umalusi has learned from the reports presented by the DHET that 128 private colleges administered the N2 to N3 examinations, despite that the colleges are not accredited by Umalusi. For that reason, Umalusi has directed the DHET to investigate the matter and furnish Umalusi with a full report. Regarding examination malpractices, while all 4 assessment bodies reported some detected cases of malpractice or cheating during the writing of the examinations, I find it necessary to flag the following cases. Almost 365 N2 to N3 candidates in the private college sector are reported to have been involved in acts of copying. In the case of the NSC, while there's been a reduction in the number of reported cases of group copying in the Department of Basic Education, that is, the number decreased from 945 in 2023 to 407 in 2024. Umalusi remains seriously concerned that KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga are once again at the top of the list, with 195 and 74 implicated candidates respectively. I want to state emphatically that cheating does not pay. This finds support in the judgment of the Mpumalanga Division of the High Court, which was delivered on 12 August 2024 in respect of 448 learners from a number of schools in the Mpumalanga province who cheated during their NSC examinations during October-December 2022. In the judgment, the acting judge said in paragraph 37, "I have no doubt that the learners have cheated and had deserved to be punished as they were. What the learners must appreciate is that cheating does not pay." Regarding previous cases of irregularities involving teachers and invigilators, Umalusi is pleased with the progress made by the Department of Basic Education. The conclusion of the cases resulted in some of the invigilators and teachers being dismissed, while others had their salaries docked for up to 3 months. Similarly, we are pleased that the DB is considering reporting such cases to the South African Council for Educators, SACE. Umalusi remains concerned at the lack of a resolution in respect of the previous cases of irregularities involving the DHET's GTC ABET qualification. We urge the DHET to give this matter the agency that it deserves. One area of concern is the area of marking concessions. We are also concerned at the year-on-year increase in the number of marking concessions that the DHET applied for. For the 2024 examination, Umalusi received marking concessions in 19 subjects compared to 17 subjects in 2023. A marking concession, colleagues, is an instance where an assessment body makes a request to Umalusi to have certain questions found to be problematic during the marking process to be excluded, either entirely or partly, and upscaling the total marks achieved using conversion tables. What is problematic about this practice is that it has the likelihood of negatively affecting the overall standard of the question paper concerned. Umalusi urges all role players to put in place stringent measures to prevent the recurrence of all the above issues. If left unattended, the lapses in question could undermine the validity of the exam and the integrity of certificates issued by Umalusi. Professor Balim will explain in the approval statement how such cases must be dealt with by the relevant assessment bodies. My apologies. Umalusi strongly condemns the reported cases of the girl students who became victims of rape while preparing themselves for the examinations in the Eastern Cape. We urge stakeholders, including the law enforcement agencies, to work together to avoid the recurrence of this shocking reality. We are very grateful to the Executive Committee of Council for investing 2 full days of their time extracting meaning out of the large volumes of information presented by the assessment bodies and Umalusi in respect of the 11 sets of the examination results. We are grateful for EXCO's members' time, insight, expertise, and their commitment, without which would not have been here. Special thanks go to the assessment bodies for cooperating in various ways with both the Assessment Status Committee of Council and the Executive Committee of Council at the various stages of the quality assurance value chain. Finally, I would like to express my warmest, sincerest, and heartfelt congratulations to the class of 2024, their family and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO. We will now hand over to Professor Balim to read the approval statement. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much. And thank you all. There's a microphone in front of me that seems to be connected to nothing. I hope somebody is hearing it. But good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. And I want to greet the CEO of Umalusi, Dr. Mafura Kometsi, who has just addressed you, Umalusi management and staff, the assessment bodies that are who are here and well represented, the DBE, the DHET, IEB, and Sakai, members of the media, warm greetings, and of course the class of 2024, who are really the subject of our discussion today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by reiterating that Umalusi draws its mandate in relation to quality assurance at the exit level of national examinations from the General and Further Education and Training Quality Assurance Act, Act 58 of 2001, as it's been amended. The Act assigns to Umalusi a range of powers and functions, including approval of the publication of learner results if the Council is satisfied that the assessment body or the education institution has conducted the assessment free from any irregularity that may jeopardize the integrity of the assessment of its outcomes, complied with the requirements prescribed by the Council for conducting assessments, applied the standards prescribed by the Council with which a learner is required to comply in order to obtain a certificate, and complied with every other condition determined by the Council. Following the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate, National Senior Certificate Vocational, that's the NCV levels 2 to 4, the NATED Report 190/191, N2 and N3, General Education and Training Certificate for Adult Basic Education and Training, what we refer to as the GETC ABET qualification. Following those examinations by the 4 assessment bodies, namely the Department of Basic Education, who I will refer to as DBE, the Department of Higher Education and Training, the DHET, the Independent Examinations Board, IEB, and the South African Comprehensive Assessment Institute, Sakai, and the monitoring thereof by Umalusi, both the assessment bodies and Umalusi presented their reports for the consideration of the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council during EXCO's approval meetings on the 7th and 9th of January 2025. The approval statements bring together decisions taken after careful consideration of available evidence by various role players at different stages of Umalusi's quality assurance cycle. EXCO's approval for the release of the candidates' results is confirmation that the assessments leading to certification in schools, adult education centers, and technical and vocational education and training colleges was of the required standard across all qualifications for all examinations conducted in this period under review. I should mention that in my reading of the statements, you'll find some of it repetitive. However, the repetition is necessary, mainly to ensure thoroughness for each of the individual examination bodies. One critical quality assurance process that precedes the approval meetings is the standardization of examination results by the Assessment Standards Committee of Umalusi Council. During its standardization meetings, the ASC conducted careful analysis of the results for each of over 500 subjects, spread across 4 assessment bodies and qualifications to arrive at its standardization decisions. The process is detailed and rigorous and is guided by standardization principles, which are supported by numerical evidence and narrative reports. The standardization principles are a matter of public knowledge, and I will not speak to the detail of these. The principles are available on the Umalusi website if you need access. Let me also say that media, you will get a copy of this report, so I won't go through the detail of all the analysis that is here. I'll merely mention or refer to them. I will now present the approval decisions of EXCO, of Council for each assessment body, starting with the results of Sakai. Thereafter, I will move on to the results of the IEB, followed by those of the DHET, and then conclude with the results of the Department of Basic Education, the DBE. So to start then with standardization approval decisions for Sakai. The Sakai has for the 3rd year in succession conducted and managed the examinations as a fully accredited assessment body after Umalusi granted it full accreditation status to assess the General Education and Training Certificate for Adult Basic Education and the National Senior Certificate with effect from 1 October 2022. Starting then with the GETC ABET standardization, the Sakai administered examinations to 257 candidates at 38 examination centers. Concerning the standardization of the 7 learning areas, 4 learning areas had their results accepted in the submitted or raw form, while 3 were adjusted mainly upwards. There is an analysis of the trends of performance for Sakai over the years from 2020, and you'll get access to that. The approval statement for the release of the GETC ABET results for Sakai then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the Sakai policy for the General Education and Training Certificate, Adult Basic Education and Training, external examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 GETC ABET examinations administered by the Sakai. EXCO of Council approves the release of the Sakai November 2024 GETC ABET examination results. In respect of identified irregularities, the Sakai is required to block the results of all the implicated candidates, including candidates who were implicated in the alleged acts of dishonesty, pending the outcome of further Sakai investigations and verification by Umalusi. The Sakai is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit the improvement plan by 14th March 2025. EXCO of Council commends the Sakai for conducting a successful examination. Turning then to the NSC standardization decisions for Sakai. Sakai administered NSC examinations in 24 subjects to 5,789 candidates at 84 examination centers. After considering all the evidence available, the ASC arrived at the following standardization decisions. Raw marks were accepted for 14 subjects. The results in 8 subjects were adjusted mainly upwards, and the results in the remaining 2 subjects were adjusted mainly downwards. Allow me just to comment on this point about accepting raw and adjustments upwards and downwards. Raw marks accepted means that the ASC was satisfied that the examinations and the results produced as they were presented, were of a suitable standard, quality and appropriateness for the results to be accepted as they were. That usually, and I will make this point again later, is an indication of an examination system or an examination that is stabilizing, maturing, and finding a performance that is repeatable and reproducible. And that, of course, with the possibility of an improvement over the years, but certainly repeatability and reproducibility is an important consideration in this regard. Since there are few people in our society who may be interested in actual standardization decisions per subject, those are presented in the document that you will be receiving. And we've in fact detailed which marks were accepted as raw, or subjects which raw marks were accepted, the subjects in which mainly upward adjustments were made, and the subjects in which mainly downward adjustments were made. The approval statements for the release of the NSC results for Sakai then read as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate Examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 National Senior Certificate Examinations administered by Sakai. EXCO of Council approves the release of the Sakai November 2024 National Senior Certificate Examination results. Regarding the identified irregularities, Sakai is required to nullify the results of the candidates implicated in the irregularities and implement sustainable strategies to mitigate the recurrence of reported administrative errors and omissions. The Sakai is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit the improvement plan by the 14th of March 2025. The EXCO of Council commends Sakai for conducting a successful examination. Please excuse me. I now turn to standardization and approval decisions for the IEB. Looking at the GETC ABET standardization decisions for the IEB, the GETC ABET examinations of the IEB were administered in 378 candidates at 53 examination centers. The results in the 7 learning areas were standardized as follows. Raw marks were accepted in 2 of the learning areas. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 2 of the learning areas, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 3 of the learning areas. The approval statement for the release of the GETC ABET results for IEB reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the IEB policy on conduct, administration and management of examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 GETC ABET examinations administered by the IEB. EXCO of Council approves the release of the IEB November 2024 GETC ABET examination results. In respect of identified irregularities, the IEB is required to block the results of all implicated candidates, including candidates who are implicated in the alleged acts of dishonesty, pending the outcome of further IEB investigation and verification by Umalusi. The IEB is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit the improvement plan by 14 March 2025. EXCO of Council expressed its concerns to the IEB on the management of irregularities and requests the IEB to submit the improvement plan by 31 March 2025 on strategies for attending to these irregularities. That's the improvement plan that I'm referring to. Turning to the National Senior Certificate Standardization decisions for the IEB, a total of 16,304 candidates wrote the National Senior Certificate examinations at 256 examination centers under the IEB. The IEB presented 58 subject results for standardizations, and after considering the available evidence, raw marks were accepted for 42 of these subjects. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 8 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 8 subjects. From the table that you will see, I just wanted to note that the number of subjects presented for standardization by the IEB has been on a downward trajectory since 2020. There is again a table in the report that you will receive that will detail the subjects that were standardized and the form of that standardization, whether raw marks were accepted or upward adjustments were made or mainly downward adjustments were made. The approval statement for the release of the National Senior Certificate results for the IEB then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate and management of the National Senior Certificate examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 National Senior Certificate examinations administered by the IEB. Exco of Council approves the release of the IEB November 2024 NSC examination results. In respect of identified irregularities, the IEB is required to nullify the results of candidates implicated in the irregularities. The IEB is also required to address the Directors for Compliance and Improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit an improvement plan by the 14th of March 2025. Exco of Council commends the IEB for conducting a successful examination. Colleagues, I now turn to standardization and approval decisions for the DHET. This section of the approval statement focuses on the 3 sets of results for examinations administered by the Department of Higher Education and Training. These are the GETC ABET examinations, the National Senior Certificate Vocational, that's the NCV Level 2 and Level 4, and the NATED Report 190-191 N2 and N3 qualifications. Turning to the GETC ABET standardization decisions, the DHET administered GETC ABET examinations to 39,804 candidates at 1,562 examination centers. The following standardizations were made for the 26 learning areas that were administered. Raw marks were accepted in 12 of the learning areas. 10 learning areas were adjusted mainly upwards. Excuse me. And 4 learning areas were adjusted mainly downwards. The approval statement for the release of the GETC ABET results administered by the DHET then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the national policy pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of examinations of colleges, established, declared or registered in terms of the Continuing Education and Training Act. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 GETC ABET examinations administered by the DHET. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DHET November 2024 GTC ABET examination results. In respect of identified irregularities, the DHET is required to block the results of all candidates implicated in irregularities, including the candidates who are implicated in the alleged acts of dishonesty, pending the outcome of further DHET investigations and verification by Umalusi. As mentioned in the November 22 and November 2023 statements, the high number of irregularities in these examinations remain a concern. The DHET is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit the improvement plan by the 14th of March 2025. EXCO of Council expresses its concern at the persistent lapses in the management of these examinations and requires the DHET to actively engage with Umalusi on implementation of an agreed improvement plan. Turning now to the NCV levels 2 to 4 standardization decisions for the DHET, the NCV L2 to L4 examinations were written by 138,000 candidates, and this is made up of 53,867 at level 2 and around 49,000 at level 3, and a further 35,000 at level 4. And these were administered at 261 examination centers. The standardization decisions arrived at are as follows. Raw marks were accepted for 182 subjects. That's about 68%. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 37 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 49 subjects. One subject was not standardized. I'll talk to that a little later. The AC could not standardize materials level 2, that's the subject, because the DHET administered a wrong question paper. Consequently, the examination will be re-administered on the 21st of February 2025 during the supplementary examination period. The tabulated information which you will receive shows an upward trend in the number of subjects for which raw marks are being accepted over the period from 2020 to 2024. Once again, this is a sign of a maturing system, and it is a highly commendable development. The approval statement for the release of the NCV level 2 to 4 results in the DHET then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of EXCO of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the national policy pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the examinations of colleges, established, declared or registered in terms of the Continuing Education and Training Act 2006. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 NCV levels 2 to 4 examinations administered by the DHET. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DHET November 2024 NCV levels 2 to 4 examination results. The DHET is required to, firstly, in respect of identified irregularities, block the results of all candidates implicated in the irregularities, including the candidates who are implicated in the alleged acts of dishonesty, pending the outcome of further DHET investigations and verification by Umalusi. Secondly, to nullify the November 2024 materials NCV level 2 examination results. Thirdly, to block the results of candidates and centers that fail to comply with the ICAS and ISAT/PAT requirements. This is the assessments that are done at the school, and the acronyms mean something. I just can't get them in my head right now. but they relate to the assessments that are done at school, which form part of the final overall result. And this is these results are to be blocked at the centres that fail to comply with the requirements, pending the outcomes of further investigation by DHET and verification by Umalusi. And then lastly, the DHET is expected to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the quality assurance of assessment report and submit the improvement plan by the 14th of March 2025. EXCO of Council expresses its concern at the persistent lapses in the management of these examinations and requires the DHE to actively engage with Umalusi on the implementation of an agreed improvement plan. If we now turn to the N2 to N3 standardization decisions for the DHET, this year's N2 N3 examinations were written by 49,421 candidates at 379 examination centres. For the 55 instructional offerings that were standardized, the following decisions were taken. Raw marks were accepted for 28 of the subjects. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 15 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 12 subjects. The results and our analysis show that the number of subjects for which raw marks were accepted is declining, while upward adjustments are increasing, and this is a cause for concern. The approval statements for the release of the N2 to N3 results in the DHET examinations then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the national policy pertaining to the conduct, administration, and management of the examination of colleges, established, declared or registered in terms of the Continuing Education and Training Act 2006. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 NATED Report 190-191 Engineering Studies N2 and N3 examinations administered by the DHET. EXCO of Council approves the release of the DHET November 2024 NATED N2 N3 examination results. The DHET is required to, firstly, in respect of identified irregularities, block the results of all candidates implicated in irregularities, including the candidates who were implicated in the alleged acts of dishonesty, pending the outcome of further DHET investigation and verification by Umalusi. Block the results of candidates and centres that fail to comply with ICAS requirements, pending the outcome of further investigation by the DHET and verification by Umalusi. Thirdly, to block the results of the learners that wrote at unaccredited centres without concessions from Umalusi, pending the outcome of further DHET investigations and verification by Umalusi. And lastly, address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment Report and to submit the improvement plan by the 14th of March 2025. EXCO of Council expresses its concern at the persistent lapses in the management of these examinations and requires the DHET to actively engage with Umalusi on the implementation of an agreed improvement plan. The three approval statements for the examinations administered by the DHET raise several concerns about various aspects of the conduct, administration, and management of the GATC ABET, the NCV Level 2 to 4 examinations. It is for this reason that EXCO of Council requires the DHET to actively engage with Umalusi on the implementation of an agreed improvement plan. The specific lapses which the DHET's improvement plan must consider will be detailed in the letter that Umalusi will write to the Director General of the DHET. In this final of the section of the statement, we present the National Senior Certificate Examination results for the Department of Basic Education, the DBE. Out of the 880,209 candidates who were registered to write the NSC examination under the DBE, 810,900 who managed to write, or rather there were only 810,000 who actually managed to write. This implies that 69,309 candidates, or about 8% of the registered students, were absent from the examinations. And of course some assessment needs to be done. The 810,900 candidates who sat for the examinations include 704,401 full-time candidates and 106,499 part-time candidates. The examinations were written at 6,933 examination centers across the 9 provinces. The DBE presented results for 68 subjects for standardizations, and after careful analysis of the numerical evidence and the narrative reports presented, the ASC arrived at the following decisions. Raw marks were accepted in 53 of the subjects, that's about 78% of the subjects. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 2 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments were made in 13 subjects. A year-on-year comparison of the DBE results show a clear pattern of an upward trend in the number of subjects for which raw marks are being accepted over the last 4 years. This is a very clear signal that the system continues to produce consistent and reliable results over time. The standardizations taken for each of the 68 subjects administered by the DBE are in the table that you will receive, and they're broken down individually by those for which raw marks were accepted, those for which mainly upward adjustments were made, and those for which mainly downward adjustments were made. The approval statement for the release of the NSC results administered by the DBE then reads as follows. Having studied all the evidence presented, the Executive Committee of Umalusi Council concluded that the examinations were administered largely in accordance with the regulations pertaining to the conduct, administration and management of the National Senior Certificate Examinations. There were no systemic irregularities reported that might have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the November 2024 National Senior Certificate Examinations administered by the DBE. Exco of Council approves the release of the DBE November 2024 National Senior Certificate Examination results. In respect of identified irregularities, the DBE is required to block the results of all candidates implicated in irregularities, including the candidates who are implicated in alleged acts of dishonesty, pending the outcome of the DBE investigations and verification by Umalusi. The DBE is required to address the directives for compliance and improvement highlighted in the Quality Assurance of Assessment report and to submit the improvement plan by 14th March 2025. Exco of Council commends the DBE for conducting a successful examination on such a large scale. To bring all of this together, then, on the basis of the information that I've just reported, the overall picture for 2024 end of the year national examinations can be summarized as follows. The examinations were written by 1,060,852 candidates, distributed across 4 assessment bodies and 4 qualifications. The NSC candidates contributed about almost 79% of the total. The finer details are of course provided in a table that you will receive in the report. Of the 514 subject results that were presented for standardization, raw marks were accepted in 337 subjects, that's about 66%. Generally, upward adjustments were made in 85 subjects, and generally downward adjustments were made in 91 subjects. The breakdown by qualification is as follows. National Senior Certificate, that's the DBE, IEB and Sakai. Out of the 150 subjects, raw marks were accepted in 109 subjects. 18 subjects were mainly adjusted upwards, and 23 subjects were mainly adjusted downwards. For the NCV levels 2 to 4, administered by DHET, 182 of the 268 subjects had their raw marks accepted. Mainly upward adjustments were made in 37 subjects. 49 subjects were mainly adjusted downwards. And to remind you, materials level 2 was not standardized because of the reasons I've explained. For the N2 to N3 DHET results, raw marks were accepted in 28 subjects. 15 subjects were adjusted mainly upwards, and 12 subjects were adjusted mainly downwards. For the GTC ABET examinations administered by DHET, IEB and Sakai, raw marks were accepted in 18 of the 40 subjects, mainly upward adjustments on 15 subjects, and mainly downward adjustments on 7 of these subjects. During the process for standardization and approval of results, Umalusi noted specific issues that require the attention of the relevant assessment bodies. Whereas those issues will be covered in the assessment body specific composite reports detailing areas of best practice, areas of non-compliance, and directives for compliance and improvement, it is worth mentioning that a high absenteeism rate has once again been noted in some of the examinations. Equally important, there are subjects that continue to produce unusually high failure rates. These observations raise questions about the levels of support that candidates find in their teaching, learning, and examination preparation experiences. A few comments as I conclude then. Umalusi is extremely pleased that there were no detected cases of paper leakages. And I think I'm correct to say this is the 4th year in a row. No other irregularities that could have compromised the overall credibility and integrity of the examinations. We are very grateful to all examining bodies and related role players for tightening up the entire value chain, including the work done by the State Security Agency in relation to the places where question papers are printed, packaged, and stored. Umalusi congratulates the class of 2024 who have succeeded in the examinations. Words of appreciation are also due to their teachers, to their parents and guardians, and all those who have supported the learners throughout their journey, including the maintenance and cleaning staff at our schools and colleges, the taxi and other public-private transport drivers who take care in bringing our learners to school, and to the community members who show concern for the learning of our children. We thank everybody, all role players, for ushering the class of 2024 to this important day. To those learners who have not succeeded, please don't give up. Effort is important, and your effort is recognized. Work harder, and you will do better in this year's examinations. For guidance in terms of what to look for in choosing an institution, a school or private college to register with to improve your results, you are advised to visit the website of Umalusi. That will ensure that you do not fall prey to bogus institutions. Please be careful of this. Umalusi congratulates all the assessment bodies for successfully conducting and managing 2024 end-of-year examinations. As evidenced by the numbers that we present, the examination system is large and complex. It is not an easy task to ensure that each one of over 1 million candidates across the length and breadth of South Africa receives the correct question paper at the right time and in the correct venue. That individual scripts are collected and marked, that marks are verified and then transferred onto the computer system and submitted to Umalusi for standardization purposes. That standardization decisions are implemented on the system And lastly, that learners are resulted in a timely manner. All this done with proper attention to integrity in the process. This is certainly most deserving of our collective social commendation. I wish to thank all the members of the Assessment Standards Committee under the chairpersonship of Professor Loiso Jita and his deputy, Professor Mabokang Monnapule Mapesela, who worked tirelessly to ensure delivery of credible outcomes. This committee of 15 members, constituted by some of the finest minds drawn from various university and research institutes in South Africa, is always willing to sacrifice their valuable time during the festive season to ensure the best outcome for South African learners. I extend words of appreciation to my colleagues in the Executive Committee of the Umalusi Council for investing time to consider the reports presented by the 4 assessment bodies, which led to the approval of the 11 sets of results that we've presented. I also thank the CEO of Umalusi, Dr. Rakometsi, his management team, and the support staff at the institution for the excellent work that they do behind the scenes. The CEO and his team work tirelessly and under very difficult time pressures to deliver the best for the country. Their commitment has ensured that South Africa's education system is anchored in quality, credibility, and integrity. Nobody doubts what we do in the service of every single person in this country who chooses to walk the path of building their lives through education. Nobody is ever hesitant about the fact that the best service we can do to each of those young people is to give them a certificate that has credibility. I want to say that while our systems are certainly not without criticism, and some of the criticisms you've heard in our statement reports, I do think that we as a country, as a society, should always acknowledge, stand shoulder to shoulder in defense of what really is a very good and credible system. And that society in general should be stand up in defense of that system. And I wish you all the best for 2025, and I thank you for listening to me. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.